Parents with nanny cams. What have you caught your babysitter doing? Story 1. A horrifying case recently occurred in the vicinity of where I live. A woman was hired to watch over a 2-year-old child while the husband was away from the country. As time went by, the toddler began to look more and more malnourished, leading the woman to set up a spy camera. When the footage was examined, it showed the woman bringing her own child to the house and feeding him the food that was intended for the kid she was babysitting. She was then promptly arrested by the police. Story 2. I was shocked when I caught my female cousin, / the babysitter, masturbating on her couch. I decided to keep quiet in order to avoid an uncomfortable situation, and I noticed that this happened quite often. A few months later, I made a surprise visit, and her expression changed when she saw me. I realized then that I should have mentioned the couch incident to avoid the awkwardness again. Story 3. My mom was worried about my sister, so she decided to install a nanny cam in her bedroom. To her surprise, the only thing my mom allegedly saw was the babysitter crying while holding my sister. It turns out that the babysitter had tragically lost her baby the day before. Story 4. My aunt's friend was concerned when she noticed her child was suddenly crying more than usual. Upon investigation, she set up a nanny cam to uncover the cause of the distress. To her surprise, she discovered the nanny was using Clorox wipes instead of the baby wipes she had provided to clean the child's bottom. Alarmed, the aunt's friend immediately confronted the nanny and put an end to the inhumane practice. Story 5. I recently had the pleasure of sitting for a couple who had a security camera in their living room, the kind that you'd find in a movie theater. It was a memorable experience as I witnessed firsthand the couple's quick thinking when their 2-year-old son tried to eat a rock. Without hesitation, they handed me a video that showed them performing the Heimlich maneuver on their child. Story 6. I set up a nanny cam to keep a close watch on my elderly grandfather, especially when homemaids were around. My grandfather was asking for extravagant amounts of money and couldn't recall what had happened to it. To add to the mystery, my aunt's treasured brooch had vanished. Later, I heard reports of my grandfather behaving inappropriately with some of the home health aides. He was bypassing his medication and instead giving away his money, as well as sexually harassing another one of the aides. Story 7. My mom had her suspicions when she noticed that her babysitter had been acting strangely, so she set up a camcorder to catch her in the act. Sure enough, the footage revealed she had been stealing from us and had taken a lot of our things. Most of the stolen items were returned, but my mom was still considering reporting her to the authorities. However, in the end, she decided not to, and I'm sure she's still out there pilfering from other people's homes. Story 8. I was horrified to hear that the family I nanny for had had experiences with a previous nanny who had done some truly terrible things. The two that particularly outraged me were 1. Leaving their 3-year-old daughter in the bath with the water up to her chest for 2 hours every day, while she was in another room and unable to see the child. And 2, taking the same children on an errand and the doorbell camera catching her placing the toddler in the car seat without even buckling her up. The mother then said that you could see the toddler desperately trying to buckle herself in before they drove off. Story 9. Due to the cameras installed around my grandmother's house, we were horrified to discover that one of the nurses assigned to her care had physically abused her for an entire minute. Despite knowing that the cameras were there, the nurse showed no remorse and was subsequently fired. We live in a county that upholds its laws. Unfortunately, we were unable to press charges against the nurse. Story 10. I paid an employee to come to my house while we were away to let my dog out, feed her, and play with her for a while. Unfortunately, I ended up with footage of him lounging around in my bed, naked. To make matters worse, he had brought over a dog he was dog-sitting for someone else, which I wasn't aware of. My dog, who is not very fond of other dogs she's not familiar with, was up all night stressed out by the unwelcome intruder. Story 11. The kids were becoming sluggish and gaining weight rapidly, so the staff set up cameras to investigate. It was soon discovered that one of their carers was secretly giving the babies double portions and overfeeding them against their will. This was my equivalent of a $3,000 investigation. Story 12. I wish I had a nanny cam so I could have seen what my stepsister was really doing while she was supposed to be taking care of my brother with disabilities. She was actually emptying out the capsules of his medication and saving the contents for later. I didn't find out about this until my brother started having seizures on a frequent basis and ended up back in the hospital for the second time. Story 13. One day our nanny was caught red-handed trying to feed our younger brothers, who were 4 and 5 years old, a snack that was most definitely not fit for consumption. Charcoal. To our surprise, she claimed that she thought it was a snack, as it was stored in a box. Needless to say, we were taken aback and quickly put a stop to her plans. Story 14. After my parents made plans to attend a wedding a couple hours away, they decided to hire a regular babysitter to look after my younger siblings overnight. To ensure the safety of the kids, they set up nanny cams in multiple rooms, including the living room, kitchen, and bedrooms. When my parents returned, they noticed that the camera in the master bedroom had been triggered. Upon taking a look, they were shocked to find my grandpa and the sitter both naked, making out passionately, then staggering towards the bed. After about 20 minutes of banging on my parents' bed, my dad called me laughing his ass off, even though my mom was crying in the background, completely mortified. After confronting the sitter, she simply apologized, while my grandpa said that, at his age, he had to seize every opportunity. I lay awake at night sometimes, wondering what kind of game my grandpa was playing to get the sitter's pants off. Story 15. My mom loves to tell me the story of when I was a kid and gave a big comforting hug to my babysitter, who'd suddenly burst into tears while making lunch for me. It turns out that her dad had passed away a month earlier, and that day had been especially difficult. Even now, I remember her and hope she's doing better. Story 16. At the nursing home I worked at, there was an elderly man who, despite his near blindness, would often ask the aides to show him their chests and offer him shots of whiskey. Despite his vision being so poor he couldn't even read the large print menu cards, he still managed to know if something was out of place. Like if we had to change his adult brief and he would apologize for us having to see his penis. Despite his inappropriate requests, we all loved him dearly. He may have been a bit of a pervert, but we couldn't help but feel affection for the half-blind old man. Story 17. The parents of a baby girl were worried because she was crying excessively. She had no apparent reason for this behavior and was visibly stressed. Upon further examination, tiny dots were found on her belly. The family was in shock and disbelief, suspecting their babysitter of causing the mysterious marks. To find out the truth, the parents set up cameras to monitor the babysitter's behavior. To their horror, they discovered that the babysitter had been torturing the baby with a needle, violently shaking her cradle, and committing other malicious acts. The police were immediately called and the babysitter was arrested for her crimes. Story 18. My kiddo and I were 20 minutes away from bedtime when I caught her in the act, constructing a fortress with pillows and blankets strong enough to ward off any monsters that might come out during the thunderstorm. Of course, I had to take action and discipline her appropriately. Story 19. I was an only child and there weren't any cameras around, but my parents had left a small bucket of toys and other things to keep me entertained while they had to take overtime at work. They hired a babysitter to watch me, and she moved the bucket of toys to another room, put me in a crib, and largely left me to my own devices. I was alone in the crib for hours with nothing to do, being checked on or fed every now and then. When my parents came back, they found me sadly sitting in the crib. Story 20. When my daughter was a baby, my uncle told me about a time a babysitter saved her life. She had somehow swallowed a small piece of something, and the quick-thinking sitter used the Heimlich maneuver, which is specifically designed for babies, to dislodge it. My cousin's family was incredibly thankful, and they've been searching for the hero babysitter ever since. They believe she's in her late 40s now.